About an hour later, Petra called to check in. I told her everything that had happened, and she was genuinely sorry. She asked what I planned to do next. I told her I was going to divorce Sally, and, obviously, I couldn't stay at Jordan's any longer. Petra made me promise to keep in touch with her. She also mentioned that Simon Johnson would be looking to get in touch with me soon and said it was important I stay reachable. Paul had already told me something similar. I couldn't help but wonder what was so urgent about this visit from Simon Johnson. It was close to midnight by the time I got back to the Novotel. I knew I couldn't sleep in that house anymore, there were just too many memories in those walls. The next morning, after breakfast, I called my secretary, June, and asked if Tony was around. She said he wasn't coming into the office and asked what was going on. I told her the truth, plain and simple. June was so upset, I swear she started to cry while I was telling her. She mentioned Tony had told her I'd probably be resigning when I came back. She got the impression he was keeping away from the office to avoid seeing me in person. I thought it was strange that Tony would avoid me, especially after I'd gone toe-to-toe with his brother. I figured he would have loved the excuse to fire me, considering Robert was a director and there was no love lost between us. None of it made sense. First, Tony insisted I go to New York, but when I got there, everyone at Johnson's acted like my trip was a surprise. Sure, there were some late deliveries, but nobody seemed all that upset. Then there was Robert and Sally. I get that Sally is attractive, but Robert was always chasing after younger women. Sally was 5 years older than him, almost 10 years older than his usual flings. Maybe they'd really fallen for each other, since they'd spent so much time working together. I don't know. Somehow, I just didn't buy it. I went in to collect my things from the office. I made sure to wipe the hard drive on both my company computer and my laptop before turning them in, but not before making backup copies of all my files. I handed my resignation letter, which June had printed out for me, to the personnel officer in person. While I waited, he arranged for my final salary and bonuses to be paid out right away. The accounts department hesitated, but when they realized it was me leaving, they got it sorted fast. Almost everyone from the staff either helped carry my things down to the car or came out to wave goodbye. I'd left my company car locked in the garage at home. I wanted to make sure I got what was owed to me before handing it over. That was the end of that chapter. I stayed at the Novotel for about a week before I found a flat I liked. The house sold quickly, it was in a good neighborhood and I'd priced it for a fast sale. As for work, I figured I'd take a few months off and think about my next move. To be honest, I still half expected Johnson's to come back with an offer and didn't want to tie myself down too soon. Sally? I ran into her a couple of times after that. Both times ended in arguments, real shouting matches. Correction, both times, I accused her of cheating, and she threw it right back at me. Civil conversation between us was out of the question. I was surprised she didn't move in with Robert straight away. She didn't actually move in with him until months after I kicked her out. I've got no idea where she stayed in the meantime, but the investigator I hired told me she moved in with Robert right after our first big fight at the lawyer's office. Things got so heated there they almost called the police. Maybe that's when she realized there was no saving our marriage. Our next big blow-up was when we signed the divorce papers. Sally was already in the meeting room when I got there, wearing a big winter coat and sitting oddly at the table. My solicitor and I sat across from her while the details of the settlement were read out. When it was time, Sally signed the papers, and then they slid them over to me. Just as I picked up the pen, she said, "John, are you really sure you want to do this? There are things you really ought to." I cut her off. "Did you hear something, Sandra?" I asked my solicitor, not even looking at Sally. Sally lost it, cursing me out as I quickly signed and left the room without another word. Like I said, I wasn't interested in another shouting match. Plus, a few weeks, maybe a month or so, after the divorce was final, Petra called to let me know Simon Johnson would be arriving in Southampton that weekend. We made arrangements to meet at a hotel. After some slightly awkward small talk, Simon and his wife told me about their world cruise. Again, I got the sense Simon had something on his mind. He'd always just been a client before, but now he was acting almost like family. Of course, we covered condolences over Henry's death, and Simon said he was sorry about what had happened with Sally and me. Then he told me he wished he could have stepped in sooner, but he'd made a promise to Henry. That was my first clue there was more going on. The moment B, Simon's daughter, walked in with a briefcase and handed it to him, she and Simon's wife left the room and Simon's entire demeanor changed. "All right, John, let's talk business," he said suddenly. "Tell me, what did you think when Henry floated the company and didn't give you any shares?" I hesitated. "Well, It was his company, he could do what he wanted with his money. But you helped build it. From what I've heard, you went out on a limb for him plenty of times. I didn't answer. I figured he'd get to the real point soon enough. Did you know Henry owned a huge stake in Johnson's, through offshore companies? And those same companies also hold a good chunk of Jordan's shares. That was news to me. I stayed quiet, letting him continue. What did Henry say to you when he retired? He knew he didn't have long. He asked me to keep an eye on his boys, but with me off the board, there wasn't much chance of that. Simon sighed. I'm sorry to tell you, he did that intentionally. He figured the boys would run the company into the ground within a year or two, and he didn't want your name tied to the paperwork. If a company goes bankrupt because of mismanagement, the directors can be banned from ever running a business again. Henry was protecting you. Anyway, Henry was convinced his sons would end up running the company into the ground, Simon went on. But these documents right here, they make you the main shareholder in those offshore holding companies. To put it simply, you own them now. He slid a bundle of papers across the table toward me. And here's the list of all Henry's old numbered bank accounts. He asked me to hang on to everything until Jordan and Sons eventually collapsed. But after what the brothers pulled with you, I think you're better off having it all now. He paused. Did you know, according to their father's will, those brothers couldn't actually fire you? No? I didn't think so. My guess is, they set you up with Sally, pushed things just far enough that you'd quit on your own. Simon leaned back in his chair and looked at me. John, whether you realize it or not, you're a wealthy man now. Most of it's tied up offshore, so you'll need to find a way to bring it back into the country cleanly. I know some good people who can help you with that, accountants who think outside the box. My mind was spinning. It was a lot to take in. Robert Jordan had gone after Sally, sabotaged my marriage, all just to force me out of the company. But why? Simon must have seen the look on my face. I know you're angry, and I don't blame you. Here's the thing, Henry was never truly convinced those boys were his. Their mother, Martha, had a habit of straying when Henry was away on business. He actually had DNA tests done years ago. For a while, he told himself it didn't matter, but eventually, he started to believe the boys knew he wasn't really their father. He even found out they said some awful things about him behind his back. Henry always thought of you as the son he never had. So he left you everything, confident the brothers would ruin the business. Honestly, he wanted them to learn a lesson. If they ended up bankrupt, he figured it was what they deserved. I shook my head. But what about all the staff at Jordan's? If the company folds, they'll be out of work. Simon nodded. That's not going to happen. See, Henry had a plan. When the time is right, Johnson's will end all our contracts with Jordan's, should be within the week. Then, a couple offshore stockholders will dump a ton of shares on the London market, crashing the price. The right bankers will get word, and they'll call in the company's loans. That's when a consortium steps in, scoops up what's left from the banks, and quietly becomes the main shareholder. You can guess who's heading up that group, even if no one else knows it's you. Then you'll renegotiate all the Johnson's contracts, bring stability back, and maybe even invite me to join your board one day. Before long, a merger with Johnson's will put you right at the top. He smiled a little. So, John, what do you think? I just stared at the table. I still don't get it. Why didn't Henry just leave everything to me from the start? Simon shrugged. Because if he had, you'd spend the next 2 decades fighting off legal challenges from the family. You spent years at Henry's side, everyone would accuse you of manipulating him. The family always suspected Henry had hidden money overseas, that's why he gave it all to me to hold. If anyone checks where your new wealth comes from, all they'll find is me, and I'm not connected to Johnson's anymore, so there's no risk of insider trading. Plus, I've been out of the country for months, so the timing's perfect. Plus. And that's where things landed. I'm now the joint chairman of Simon Johnson Associates. I leave Paul to run things in the US while I keep my eye on the European operations. Both Jordan brothers ended up bankrupt and barred from running any company for a decade. They tried to start new ventures here and there, but I made sure someone kept an eye on them. Ironically, Robert married Sally. I think he figured she'd get her hands on some of the cash he believed would come my way. But by the time I officially took over those accounts, Sally and I were already divorced, so he didn't stand a chance. Once they got married, I went to court and got her alimony terminated. They got nothing from me. Their marriage didn't last more than a year or so. I'll admit, I felt bad for the twins Sally had by Robert. Judging by what my investigator saw, they started their relationship at the office after I left. They didn't even see each other much in the evenings. I doubt Robert paid a penny in child support after he split. Every now and then I wondered how long Robert had been involved with Sally before I found out. She must have gotten pregnant pretty quickly after I kicked her out. Not long after, I saw her pushing a stroller down Slough High Road. The last I heard, Robert was living somewhere in southern Spain, probably keeping a low profile, with the local authorities watching him. Morocco's just a short boat ride away, and knowing Robert, that's probably his idea of a career move. I might have even tipped off the drug squad myself, just to keep things interesting. As for Tony, word is he's driving buses around London these days. Not exactly a dream job. His wife left him after she got some information about his secret flatmate. Guess who made sure she found out? And now he's stuck living with his mother, Martha. Do I feel guilty about Martha losing her income from Jordan and Sons? Honestly, I don't. Maybe she should have thought about that before she went behind Henry's back. Life has a way of coming full circle. Sally, last I heard, was in a council flat in Slough, probably getting by on government support. Maybe she's making extra money on the side, who knows? That's a cruel thing to say, but after everything that happened, it's how I feel. Things picked up fast once the transition started. Paul and I worked well together, we'd both learned from the best. I had Henry, he had Simon. Over the next few years, we acquired several other companies and became a major multinational. These days, Paul and I both step back and let the next generation handle most of the day-to-day. Simon Johnson and his wife ended up settling in England, on an estate not far from mine. B, his daughter, and I, we spend time together, but neither of us is interested in tying the knot again. We've both done that already. She's on the board with Paul, Petra, and me, and we all get along just fine. Petra? Well, she and Paul finally got married after a lot of back and forth. Paul jokes she only agreed because she got tired of waiting for me to ask her. So, you might wonder, why am I living alone in this penthouse? Truth is, something's been missing in my life for a long time, ever since, well, you know when. These days I take things one day at a time. If a good investment comes up, I might jump at it, but I know now that there's more to life than just making money. Plus. So now, here I am, sitting at my desk when this social worker hands me a letter from Sally. I skim it, then press the intercom. Colette, can you check if Beatrice is in today, and ask her to come up to my office? Yes, sir. I saw her earlier, I think she's still in. B was at my door a few minutes later. Without a word, I handed her the letter. As she read, I saw her take a few deep breaths, the kind people take when they're trying to keep their temper in check. That spiteful, vindictive woman. Did you have any clue? Not the slightest, I told her. What are you going to do? I shrugged. There's only one choice, B. Then I turned to June Parsons, the social worker. What hospital is Sally in? Slough General, she replied. And do you know what her condition is? When I saw her last night, they weren't sure. She took a cocktail of pills, just about everything she had in the house. They managed to pump her stomach, but nobody knows how long she'd been unconscious. The doctors said it'll be a while before they know the long-term effects. And the children? I placed them with a foster family for the night. They'll be taken care of today, but I wanted to ask you what you'd like to do. Oh, and I'll need that note back. If things go badly, the coroner will want to see it. No problem, I told B. Just make a copy of the letter for me, then give the original back to Miss Parsons. I hit the intercom again. Colette, get me the general manager at Slough Hospital, fast. A minute later, the phone rang. Yes, that's right, you know who I am. Here's what I need to know, how much is your hospital over budget this year? Aha. Well, here's my offer, you have a patient named Sally. Hang on, June, what name is Sally going by? The same as yours. Crawford, June replied. That caught me off guard for a second. Right, Sally Crawford. She's there after a drug overdose. Here's the deal, if she survives, I'll donate £1 million to your hospital. If she doesn't, you get nothing. I want her to get every possible chance. No cutting corners, no skimping on care. Do you understand? Good. That's all. B glanced at me. Aren't they already doing everything they can? I don't trust hospital bureaucracy these days, I said. You hear about all these corners being cut. Can't hurt to put some real incentive on the table. Now I know Sally's getting the best care possible. Right. Let's go collect the kids. That's what you came for, right, June? June nodded. Well, Mrs. Crawford claims in her letter that the children are yours. I don't see any harm in letting you take care of them for now. But just so you know, legally they're still my responsibility until a judge decides otherwise. You don't need to worry. They'll be in good hands, and I'll keep you updated on everything. With your permission, we'll bring them to my house near Swindon for now. There's plenty of room and things for them to do. We can visit Sally at the hospital after. I'm glad to hear you thinking like that, Mr. Crawford. I grinned. Let's keep it simple, just John and June. The girls will feel more comfortable that way. The three of us headed down to the car park, and Miss Parsons joined B and me in the back of the limo. First stop was the hospital, but the doctors wouldn't say much. At that stage, it was just too soon to know anything for certain. Afterward, June brought us to the foster home where the kids had spent the night. B and I waited in the car while June went in to talk to them first. About 10 minutes later, she gave us the signal to come in. "Kay, Heather, this is your Uncle John. He's going to look after you until your mom is better," June explained. We decided Uncle John was the safest way to go for now, until we saw how things worked out. "Hi girls," I said. "And this is my friend Beatrice, you can call her Annie B." The twins, 10 years old and all wide-eyed, looked us both up and down like we were from another planet. "While your mom gets better, you'll be staying with me out in the country. There are horses you can ride, and we've got a pool at the house," B added. "Where's our mom? Can we see her?" Kay asked quietly. "Is she going to die?" Heather chimed in, not mincing words. "The doctors are doing everything they can to help her," I said gently. "We saw her this morning, but if you'd like, we can stop by the hospital so you can see how hard they're working to help her get better." "They might not let the kids in," June said. "They will today," I said quietly. "Trust me." After dropping June off at her car, we headed to the hospital. Just as I thought, the rules bent a little and the girls were allowed into the ICU. I expected tears, but those kids were tough. As B pointed out, there was more than a little family resemblance. Right then and there, I decided there was no need for DNA tests. The drive down to Wiltshire was quiet at first. Once the girls relaxed, though, they started playing with everything in the limo. I guess the idea of watching TV in a car was new for them. As we turned off the motorway, Heather looked at me and asked, "You're our father, aren't you?" I saw no point in hiding it. "Yes, I believe I am. I only found out today. If I'd known sooner, you would have seen a lot more of me." "We know," Heather said. "Mom told us last week she never told you. We didn't know what she was planning, but she said she'd been really mean to you, and she let you believe her other husband was our dad." Kay nodded. "She cried when she told us." "That's true," I said softly. "Maybe someday she'll explain why." "Will she get better?" Kay asked, voice trembling. "I hope so. I really do." "She doesn't want to," Heather said quietly. "She wants to go to heaven." B shook her head. "I can't believe that, not with two girls like you." "She's just tired," Heather insisted. "She works so hard and there's never enough money." "Well, that won't be a problem anymore," I promised. "And when she's better, I hope she'll come live in that little house over there." The car turned into the estate. "You'll be able to ride horses, swim, do all the things you want." The girls' eyes went huge as the car stopped in front of the house. The staff came down the steps, eager to greet them. A guest room with twin beds was ready. B and I were pretty much forgotten as the girls were swept inside. "Well, that's a turn-up," B said, smiling a little. "I wonder why she never told you they were yours." "Sally always was good at hiding things," I said. "Now that I think about it, she must have been pregnant when we signed the divorce papers. I remember her wearing a long coat, sitting all hunched up that day. I thought it was odd, but didn't put two and two together. Still, I'll never understand why she hated me so much. She cheated, not me. What did she expect me to do when I found out she was with Robert?" "You'll have to ask her, if she pulls through," B replied. The girls settled in surprisingly well. The staff made a fuss over them, and every night I'd tuck them in and tell them a little about their mother and me, leaving out the worst of it, of course. Plus, 2 weeks later, I sat by Sally's hospital bed. She'd finally woken up properly the night before. I put the letter in her hand and waited. I must have dozed off, because the first thing I heard was her voice. "Hello, John. I'm sorry." She was looking at the letter. "How are the girls?" "They're good. I left them in the pool this morning. Honestly, they're wearing out the staff. Two great kids, Sally, a real credit to you. B's bringing them in later." "Thank you. I'm sorry I kept them from you. It was a foolish, angry choice, and once I'd done it, I couldn't figure out how to undo it." "Well, I wish you'd found another way, I said gently. I know. I was desperate, John. I owe so much money. Robert left me with a mountain of debt. He made me sign everything because he couldn't get credit after his bankruptcy. I think that's why he married me. You don't have any debts anymore, Sally. I've taken care of all that. And the folks you borrowed from, well, you won't be hearing from them again. She looked at me with real surprise. You found out about all that? That wasn't hard to sort out, I told Sally. Your creditors showed up at your flat one afternoon while one of my folks was picking up the last of the girls' things. He told them to come back later, and let's just say they didn't get the welcome they were expecting when they returned. You don't need to worry, they're not going to bother you anymore. She stared at me for a moment. Why are you being so kind, John? Last time we saw each other, you were, well. That was years ago, Sally. Back then, I was still hurting. It's just a memory now, even if it still stings sometimes. When I read your letter, it opened up a lot of old wounds. It's going to take time for me to forgive you for keeping my girls away from me. She nodded, her voice small. I'm sorry. I know I've said that a lot, but it's true. Well, as far as the twins know, you and I are friends now. If you're up for it, you'll be moving to my place tomorrow. I've arranged for a couple of nurses to help you out until you're fully recovered. And after that, if you want, you and the girls can stay in one of the houses on the estate. That way I get to see them, too. She looked at me, uncertain. You're not going to take the girls away from me? No, Sally. I'm not going to take their mom from them, not after all that's happened. They love you, maybe even more than I ever did. But I will promise you this, I'll never let you keep them from me again. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry. I really am, John. I can't say it enough. I've made a lot of mistakes. I hesitated. There's just one thing I've got to ask you. Why Robert? Why did you end up with him? She looked away, her face sad and tired. I've asked myself that 1,000 times. I don't know if I'll ever really have a good answer. Robert started working on me slowly, for a long time. I know now that he was doing it on purpose. He told me as much when he realized the girls weren't his. It didn't take him long to figure it out, they looked just like you. He told me they couldn't fire you because of something in their father's will. He and Tony were convinced you'd hidden away some of Henry's money, and they thought if you didn't have a job, you'd have to dip into it, maybe start your own company. They even hired private detectives to keep tabs on you. I frowned. They must have been pretty upset when Johnson's canceled their contracts. She managed a weak smile. Oh, they were furious when you met with Simon Johnson in Southampton. The bank calling in the company loans really blindsided them. I don't think they saw that coming at all. Then the police showed up at the house. Turns out Robert had charged just about everything to the company, cars, bills, even our rent. When he and Tony got arrested for misusing company funds, we lost everything. No house, no car, nothing. I can't say I was surprised. I shook my head. I never lifted a finger to help the law along, Sally. The brothers brought all that on themselves. But with all those high salaries, I still can't figure out where all their money went. She shrugged. They were always taking risks, playing the stock market, throwing money around in clubs, gambling. When the money dried up, that's when they came up with the idea to force you out. They thought you'd show your hand, reveal where Henry's money was hidden. I met her gaze. But you never did tell me why you believed Robert over me. She sighed. I was angry with you, John. And Robert was clever, he knew how to play on my insecurities. Every time you left on a business trip, he'd make little comments, let me overhear things that made me think you had girlfriends everywhere. Sometimes he'd talk with Tony on the phone about expenses for entertaining in New York or Rome. I'm sure it was all work, but he planted those doubts in my head. I convinced myself that every time you went away, you were off with another woman. So why didn't you ask me about it? Why not just confront me? She shook her head. Because I didn't want to know the truth. If you admitted it, I wouldn't have been able to stay. I wasn't as strong as you, John, I couldn't have just walked away. I would have been trapped, miserable, but unable to leave. I almost stopped believing it, though. Then that thing with the play happened. You knew how much I wanted to go. When you called to say you had to go to New York, Robert was right there. I was crying, and he comforted me. He offered to drive me home so I could pack your bag and then take me to the airport. We never went back to the office. Robert said I was too upset. We ended up down by the river at Sunnydale, just talking. Later, he took me to dinner and to the play. I think I drank too much, I know that's no excuse. That night, I made a mistake. I went home with him. I wish I could blame it all on the wine, but maybe I just wanted to feel wanted. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I thought you were off with someone else, and I wanted to get even if it didn't make any sense. I nodded quietly. So what happened after I found out? She wiped her eyes. Robert came clean, told me about their plan. If you hadn't come home that day, they were going to send you photos of us together. I knew I'd done something terrible, but it was too late to take it back. And, if you want to know the truth, Robert was a disaster as a partner. He was selfish and mean, and by the end, he'd started to get violent. I winced. I don't need those details, Sally. She nodded. Sorry. But it's true. When you came home and found us, I was so angry, I convinced myself you'd set me up. Petra told me you weren't coming home till Sunday, and I guess I wanted to blame you for everything. I even told myself you were having an affair with her. She was never anything but a friend, Sally. I see that now, she said. But at the time, I just couldn't see straight. I was furious, and mostly at myself, if I'm honest. When we divorced, I was going to tell you about the twins before you signed the papers. I didn't want to use them as leverage, so I waited. But you were still angry with me, and I lost my nerve. I let out a long breath. What's done is done. Nothing's going to change the past now. She looked at me, desperate. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about it. Maybe, in time. I doubt I'll ever forget, but the girls are what matter now. For their sake, we'll be civil, and I expect you to be, too. You're their mom, I'm their dad. Just don't bring boyfriends to my house, okay? She shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. There's never been anyone else, John. And there never will be. Ever's a long time, Sally, I said, but my voice was gentle. Plus. Sally did recover, more or less, and she lived in the little house on my estate with the girls until they went off to university. Cancer claimed her a couple years ago. I don't think she ever had the strength to fight it the way she could have. Maybe all those pills did some damage, or maybe she just didn't want to fight anymore. Bea and I ended up getting married. Do I love her? I care for Beatrice deeply. We're companions, partners, even soulmates in a way, though I can't say it's the kind of love I had with Sally. But Bea and I have a good life, and we take care of each other. She's more than earned the title of grandma, even if she says she's too young for it. The twins are grown now, with families of their own. They're happy, and that's enough for me. Am I happy? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I wish I could have lived my whole life with Sally, but life doesn't always give us what we want. Now I visit her grave every Sunday, bringing fresh flowers. Beatrice waits at the cemetery gate while I do. Life moves on, whether you're ready or not.